Tonight, the war in Iran intensifies. Critical infrastructure in Tehran attacked. The city choked by smoke. The regime decides on a new supreme leader as the conflict widens. Iran firing back.
I'm Matt Gutman in Tel Aviv. You can see the cleanup is underway where a cluster munition from an Iranian missile detonated, one of several here in Tel Aviv today.
President Trump not ruling out American boots on the ground.
Could there be? Cause for very good reason.
I'm Nicole Killian, traveling with the president in Florida as another U.S. service member is killed in action.
Also tonight, China warning. The country's top diplomat meeting the world's press. CBS News is there. Terrorism investigation.
I'm Chanel Call in New York City, where 2 people have been arrested, suspected of igniting explosive devices during an anti-Islam protest outside the mayor's official residence.
This investigation remains active, and we will continue working to analyze the devices and to determine whether anyone else may have been involved.
All that, plus pumped up.
I'm Anders Gutierrez in Los Angeles. Why drivers here are already paying some of the highest gas prices in the country, and they could be going up even higher.
Definitely frustrating. I mean, it's part of the reason why I have my bike here is because it's cheaper.
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York with Jerika Duncan.
Good evening and thanks for joining us on this busy Sunday. We begin with the breaking news that another American service member has died in the war with Iran, this time in Saudi Arabia. That brings the number of American troops killed in the conflict to 7. Tonight, the war keeps escalating, the U.S. and Israel launching new punishing attacks on Iran. So far, over 6,000 targets have been hit. Iran today trying to project stability. State TV reporting clerics have named Mojtaba Khamenei the new supreme leader. The regime also intensified attacks on neighboring Gulf states. CBS's Matt Gutman in Tel Aviv tonight leads us off. Matt.
Jerika, good evening. The U.S. and Israel have warned that this is a new phase of the war and that it would intensify. And now, for the first time, we are seeing Israel and the U.S. going after critical Iranian infrastructure.
A cloud of sooty smoke is blanketing Tehran after Israel targeted what it said were the regime's primary fuel depots overnight, igniting a fire that lit the city orange and even rained down oil droplets. Drivers on this highway forced a detour around the flames. And this video appearing to show gutters erupting in flames racing down the street. The Red Crescent says over 1,300 Iranians have been killed in 1 week of war. And tonight, a chilling warning from CENTCOM, urging Iranians to stay home because the regime is, quote, knowingly endangering innocent lives by firing missiles and drones from places like schools and hospitals, which could then be targeted by the U.S. and Israel. Though pummeled for 8 straight days, Iranian drones still squeezing through air defenses in the Gulf, one turning Kuwait's Social Security building into a tower of flames. Dubai's airport also hit this weekend. And Iranian missiles piercing Israel's air defenses. Bomblets raining down from an Iranian missile across Tel Aviv today.
So right behind me is where one of those bomblets fell. You can see it just flung that car up into the air.
We caught up with the head of Israel's opposition party outside a damaged home.
How much of a concern is that now that they are seeming to change those tactics?
It's a huge concern, of course, for the life and well-being of the Israeli people.
And tonight, a week after the U.S. and Israel killed Iran's supreme leader and dozens of senior figures, the country's clerics have announced they've selected a new leader, Ayatollah Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, a known hardliner close with Iran's security forces. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's advisor, Michael Eisenberg, with a blunt message.
The highest risk job right now is to be the new Ayatollah. That's a high-risk job. To be the head of the Iranian military, the IRGC, those are high-risk jobs. Don't take them.
They're going to be targeted.
Don't take those jobs. We're watching you.
President Trump today saying that whomever is appointed supreme leader without the approval of the U.S. is not going to last long. Now, both Netanyahu and President Trump have been urging Iranians to rise up. But a source inside Iran telling us that militias are patrolling the streets, cracking down brutally on dissent, and that an uprising right now does not seem likely. Jerika.
Matt Gutman, thank you. The naming of Iran's new supreme leader comes as President Trump says he is not ruling out sending in American ground troops. CBS's Nicole Killian is traveling with the president in Doral, Florida. Good evening, Nicole.
Good evening, Jerika. President Trump had no public events on his schedule today, but he did hold a call with the UK Prime Minister after recently criticizing him for being too slow to act.
As the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran enters its second week, President Trump isn't closing the door on deploying American ground troops.
Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level.
The White House says there are no current plans to put boots on the ground, but cautions the president is keeping his options on the table. Democrats and even some Republicans are wary.
This is already a war that is becoming an ongoing disaster. It gets worse if the president is talking about putting ground forces in.
When you start putting boots on the ground, and those boots on the ground may need reinforcement, that starts looking like a longer-term conflict.
Today, President Trump held a call with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer a day after rebuffing his offer to send aircraft carriers to the region. In an interview late Saturday, the president told CBS News it's a little bit late to be sending ships, right? A little bit late. Since the war began, the Strait of Hormuz, where about 1/5 of the world's oil typically flows, has been virtually closed to tankers, sending prices skyrocketing. On Face the Nation, Energy Secretary Chris Wright says he expects traffic to resume relatively soon.
We have a temporary period of elevated energy prices, but it will not be long. In the worst case, this is weeks. This is not months. And it leads to a much better place.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling on President Trump to immediately tap into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help lower oil and gas prices. But the president has previously downplayed that idea, saying there's already a lot of oil out there. Jerika.
Nicole Killian traveling with the president for us this weekend. Thank you. As gas prices rise, California is feeling pain at the pump more than any other state in this country. CBS's Andres Gutierrez in Los Angeles explains why. Andres, good evening.
Good evening, Jerika. Just take a look at the prices on this sign. Everything is above $5, just showing a painful reminder of how fast this is all moving. Drivers I spoke with tell me that they are paying more, getting less, and feel like there is no relief in sight. While the rest of the country is paying around $3.45 for a gallon of gas, AAA says in California it's more than $5, a jump of more than 50 cents in just a week.
I'm paying $40, but that doesn't get me a full tank anymore.
Before the war with Iran, California was already in a tough spot.
A unique market that is essentially cut off from the rest of the country.
The state has the highest gas tax in the country, almost 70 cents a gallon. It also requires a cleaner, more expensive fuel blend. What did you think about the prices when you first pulled up?
Well, the prices are nuts.
With the permanent shutdown of 2 major California refineries due to high operating costs and other factors, overall capacity will be reduced about 18%. If this conflict continues, how high could gas prices go?
Well, it's very difficult to see what the top may look like. We could ultimately see prices reaching new records if the Strait of Hormuz continues to be blocked.
Some drivers are already changing their habits.
It's part of the reason why I have my bike here is because it's cheaper.
Now, for drivers wondering how much higher prices will get, well, the record here in Los Angeles was set back in 2022, just as Russia's war in Ukraine was getting underway. Back then, drivers were paying almost $6.50 a gallon. Jerika?
That's a lot of money. Andres Gutierrez, thank you. Tonight, the FBI is investigating 2 men after an explosive device with bolts and screws was thrown into a crowd. It happened in New York City on Saturday during a protest that turned violent outside the mayor's official residence. CBS's Chanel Call is there with the very latest tonight. Chanel.
And Jerika, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who is Muslim, was inside Gracie Mansion when a small anti-Islam protest took place here yesterday afternoon. A larger counter-protest then showed up, and police say 2 men who were part of that group brought those homemade devices.
Stay in New York.
This is the moment a homemade bomb was ignited outside the New York City mayor's residence Saturday afternoon.
He threw a bomb? Did he throw a bomb, bro?
NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch says the device did not explode, but that it could have caused serious injury or death.
Based on preliminary examination and X-ray imaging, the devices, which were a bit smaller than a football, appear to be a jar wrapped in black tape, importantly with nuts, bolts, and screws, along with a hobby fuse that could be lit.
The man seen throwing it, 18-year-old Emir Balat and his 19-year-old friend Ibrahim Kayumi, both from Pennsylvania, were arrested. Authorities say they were part of a group of nearly 125 people counter-protesting a much smaller anti-Islam demonstration led by Jake Lang.
The violent left does not respect freedom of speech.
A pardoned U.S. Capitol insurrectionist who has frequently sought out political confrontations in the months after President Trump gave him clemency. In a statement, Mayor Zohran Mamdani saying, quote, yesterday, white supremacist Jake Lang organized a protest outside Gracie Mansion rooted in bigotry and racism. Adding, quote, what followed was even more disturbing. Violence at a protest is never acceptable. And police also say they found a third device in a vehicle just down the street from here. The FBI now investigating this as terrorism. And Jerika, sources telling CBS News authorities are also now working to determine if either of those two men were inspired by ISIS. Jerika?
Chanel Call, thank you. Tonight, a new warning from China, even as its top diplomat cast his country as a defender of peace and stability. CBS's Anna Corin is in Beijing tonight with new reporting inside the world's other superpower.
Jerika, China's leadership is bracing for the impact of the war in Iran, preparing for a severe disruption to its energy supplies. But many are asking why China, one of Iran's closest allies, hasn't stepped in to help. As China's foreign minister took to the stage for his annual media press conference, the war in Iran was top of his agenda. This is a war that never needed to happen, said Wang Yi, calling for military operations to cease immediately. Iran has long been a trade partner to China, in recent years selling most of its US-sanctioned oil to Beijing. China imports 70% of its energy, and Iran makes up 13% of its crude intake. That supply line has now been cut off. Why hasn't China come to Iran's aid?
No, I think China is already coming to Iran's aid by explicitly condemning this war. Now, if you expect that China will come with military means, this expectation is completely unwarranted.
China analyst Victor Gao says there is no treaty of mutual defence between the two countries, nor does China underwrite its allies' security, as we saw when the US captured Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro back in January. But events in the Middle East could overshadow the upcoming high-stakes summit between the United States and China. The country's top diplomat warning that dialogue is the only way to avoid misunderstandings that could lead to confrontation. President Trump will be here in Beijing at the end of the month, and both sides are hoping to secure deals. China's economy needs a shot in the arm, while President Trump needs to go home with a win to shore up support ahead of the midterm elections. Jerika.
Anna Corin in Beijing. Now to the weather and some welcome winter warmth. Let's check in with CBS News meteorologist Andrew Kozak in Philadelphia. Andrew.
Yeah, Jerika, not even one full day into daylight saving and the pattern already changing. Yeah, we're dealing with a couple of showers and thunderstorms across the south and even into your Monday. But the big story for millions of you as we head into the week will be the warm temperatures. Pattern changing, southwest winds, 70s as far north as New York City tomorrow, knocking on the door of some records up and down the 95 corridor by Tuesday. Even Wednesday, we could be well into the middle 80s for portions of the mid-Atlantic and up toward New England. For tomorrow, we'll be dealing with that. A couple of showers and storms, as I mentioned, across the south. Fire danger with very warm conditions across portions of the Rockies and Texas. And by the way, don't get too used to the warmth if you're in the east, because the pattern for at least the next week to week and a half is that we're going to see another surge of some cooler air as we get into the heart of March. Jerika?
Enjoy it while we can. Andrew Kozak, thank you. Straight ahead on the CBS Weekend News, as the Iran war intensifies, there's new concern tonight for Americans jailed by the regime. Tonight, there's new fear concerning the treatment of international prisoners jailed in Iran, including Americans. Their families say they were already afraid for the detainees before the war began. Now they're terrified. Here's CBS's Haley Ott in London.
Joe Bennett gets a call from his mother, Lindsay, every morning.
Some of the bombs are so close to the prison that they're blowing out the windows.
Lindsay and her husband, Craig Foreman, were detained in Iran while on a motorcycle trip around the world. Charged as spies, they've been sentenced to 10 years in Tehran's notorious Evin prison.
Not going to question.
Joe, who denies the charges, says they were taken as bargaining chips by the Iranian regime. And amid the chaos of war, their safety is more uncertain than ever.
Are they still going to get their basic necessities? Is food still going to be delivered to the prison? And as I say, it all adds to this pot of anxiety and worry.
There are at least 4 American nationals held under similar circumstances in Iran, including journalist Reza Valazadeh, who's been designated officially wrongfully detained by the U.S. government, and jeweler Kamran Hekmati, a 61-year-old of Jewish faith. Kieran Ramsey is a retired FBI assistant director who works to bring home Americans wrongly held abroad. Given the current situation, is there anything that can be done to bring these Americans home?
You know, I have 30 plus years in the federal government behind me. And had you asked me that, maybe last year or the year before, was things like a rescue operation possible for this? And I would have told you no. But when we look at what this administration did in Venezuela with Maduro, I would say everything's on the table.
The White House told us President Trump wants every detained American to be returned safely home, Jerika, and said there will be, quote, dire consequences for regimes who treat Americans as political pawns.
Haley Ott in London, thank you. Still ahead on the CBS Weekend News, long lines and delays greeted travelers at some airports today. We'll explain why. A security scare today in Kansas City. It happened at the international airport there, prompting some 2,000 people to head for the exits as well as the tarmac. Flights were temporarily suspended. The airport is now back open. Authorities did not identify the nature of the threat. Well, some major delays at Houston's Hobby Airport today. A shortage of TSA workers caused these long lines and waits of more than 3 hours to clear security. Problems were also reported in New Orleans. TSA workers are on the job without pay right now during the partial government shutdown over Homeland Security funding. Today, people around the world marked International Women's Day, calling for equal rights, equal pay, and much more. Thousands marched in the streets of Madrid, Spain, many of them wearing purple, the official color of the global event. This year, the war against Iran was top of mind, some holding up anti-war and pro-peace signs. Next on the CBS Weekend News, the perfect place to live out the golden years. But first, a look back at this day in history.
To ignore the facts of history and the aggressive impulses of an evil empire, to simply call the arms race a giant misunderstanding, and thereby remove yourself from the struggle between right and wrong and good and evil.
A Malaysia Airlines 777 cruising along at 35,000 feet from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing disappeared off the radar.
We end with a new sanctuary for seniors, a place to age safely that could increase life expectancy. But it isn't for everyone, as you'll see in tonight's Weekend Journal.
For African penguins, the phrase "life is a beach" takes on a different meaning at Boston's New England Aquarium.
We wanted to section off one area where they could have their own specialized retirement home of sorts or assisted living for penguins.
Good job, buddy. Kristen McMahon is the aquarium's curator of penguins and pinnipeds.
This is just one idea that we came up with to really get a bird's eye view, for lack of a better word, at our older animals at any time throughout the day where they're up close in this one smaller habitat.
She says the creation of a separate geriatric island allows 7 of the 38 critically endangered birds to age safely and still be with their friends. African penguins typically live 10 to 15 years in the wild.
2 capelin and an anchovy.
But at this aquarium, their lifespan has more than doubled. Good Hope is the oldest on the island at 36 years old. Lambert comes close at 33, although he needs eye drops for his one remaining eye.
Perfect, buddy.
Mia Luzietti is a senior trainer for the penguins.
We're just seeing them overall be more active as their confidence has improved being on an easier to navigate island with less aggressive birds on it.
The aquarium's conservation efforts now turning this island into a golden year sanctuary for these fortunate few.
They're great ambassador animals for their species. We're here to save them and really help bolster that natural population, whether that's through education or actually being able to share these genetics someday.
Pretty cool stuff. Well, that is the CBS Weekend News for this Sunday. I'm Jerika Duncan in New York. Have a great week.